The distance between paradise and suffering can be measured in gold pieces, but never crossed in a lifetime. In the floating spires of Stormwind City, where 10 million souls draw breath beneath banners of blue and gold, the morning light arrives, filtered through enchanted crystal windows, their surfaces polished to perfection by servant crews that have known no other purpose for 20 years. Here, in chambers larger than entire guild halls, Lord Aldrich Goldweave opens his eyes to another day of absolute comfort, another day of perfect ignorance. The morning sun filters through stained glass windows, depicting heroic alliance victories, casting rainbow patterns across marble floors that have never known the tread of common boots. Lord Aldrich Goldweave stretches languidly in his bed, crafted entirely from refined corium and draped with silk sheets woven by the finest tailors of Shatrath City. The bed alone cost more gold than most adventuring parties will see in their combined lifetimes. The silk that touches his skin was spun by artisans whose fingers went numb crafting its threads, their sacrifice measured in thread count and texture, never in human cost. But for Aldrich, this extravagance represents merely Tuesday morning. The air he breathes has been purified 17 times before reaching his lungs, filtered through magical crystals that cost more than entire Westfall farms. The water that fills his morning bath comes from the purest springs of Nargrand, teleported fresh each day at expenses that could feed 1,000 families for months. Every thread of fabric that adorns his chambers represents choices made by others to prioritize his comfort over their own survival. Decisions that transform human suffering into aristocratic pleasure with the mechanical precision of a milling machine. His morning routine begins not with checking quest journals or daily obligations like common folk, but with his personal financial advisor, a goblin named Gazlo Goldcounter, presenting him with overnight profit reports from his various business ventures across the Eastern Kingdoms, Kalimdor, and the shattered realms beyond the Dark Portal. The numbers are staggering in their casual enormity. While ordinary adventurers slept for 8 hours, dreaming perhaps of acquiring a few dozen gold pieces through dangerous dungeon expeditions, Aldrich's automated auction house operations, trade route investments, and real estate holdings generated enough passive income to purchase entire guilds, their halls, their equipment, and their accumulated treasures without creating the slightest dent in his liquid assets. "My lord," Gazlo announces with characteristic goblin enthusiasm, tempered by the practiced deference of someone whose continued prosperity depends entirely on maintaining aristocratic satisfaction. "Your Outland Spice trading venture netted us 127,000 gold overnight, primarily through artificial scarcity manipulation in the cinnamon markets of Shatrath City. The Darnassus rare herb monopoly continues performing exceptionally well, with our systematic harvesting operations maintaining 92% market control over dreamfoil and ghost mushroom distribution throughout Kalimdor. Your investment portfolio in those outland mining operations just paid quarterly dividends of 89,000 gold, extracted primarily from fell iron deposits worked by displaced Draenei communities whose alternative employment options remain strategically limited. Oh, and that small fishing village you acquired in Westfall through foreclosure proceedings. The residents are now paying rent in the form of rare fish varieties that we're selling to high-end restaurants in Stormwind's Cathedral District for premium prices that exceed their previous annual family incomes. Aldrich barely acknowledges these astronomical figures with more than a distracted nod, his attention already shifting to the selection of morning attire presented by his personal stylist. To him, these numbers represent background noise, like the sound of rain against windows or wind through trees. He has transcended the psychological point where gold acquisition generates any emotional impact whatsoever. When your liquid assets exceed 50 million gold pieces, when your investment portfolio includes controlling interests in mining operations across 3 continents, When your property holdings span from Stormwind Harbor to the floating city of Dalaran, individual transactions become as meaningless as counting raindrops during a storm. The morning meal arrives carried by a team of 6 servants, not because 6 people are required to transport breakfast from kitchen to dining chamber, but because employing excessive staff numbers serves multiple purposes beyond mere functionality. The conspicuous consumption demonstrates wealth through inefficiency, creates economic dependencies that ensure unwavering loyalty, maintains redundancy systems that guarantee uninterrupted service regardless of individual servant circumstances, and provides Aldrich with the psychological satisfaction of commanding human resources on scales that rival military units. Each servant moves with choreographed precision, their individual roles rehearsed through years of practice, their coordinated efforts transforming the simple act of eating into elaborate theatrical performance. The meal itself consists of delicacies that would reduce most Azeroth inhabitants to weeping envy. White-scale salmon caught personally by master fishermen from the pristine waters of Northrend's most remote fjords, seasoned with spices imported from Outland at costs that exceed most adventurers' entire equipment investments. Fresh bread baked from flour, milled from grains grown exclusively on his private agricultural estates in Elwyn Forest, where he has systematically purchased entire farming communities to ensure quality control through complete vertical integration. The butter spread upon this bread comes from livestock fed on grains that could sustain entire villages, their care and feeding supervised by specialists whose expertise rivals that of legendary beastmasters. But the true absurdity of Aldrich's morning routine reveals itself in the casual discussion of his residential portfolio. He owns 17 different properties across Azeroth, each one representing architectural achievements that dwarf most guild halls in scope and magnificence. His primary residence in Stormwind features 47 rooms, including a hearty personal library containing first edition spellbooks worth individual fortunes, their magical knowledge accumulated through acquisition methods that blend legitimate scholarship with morally questionable procurement strategies. The wine cellar beneath this residence houses vintages from every major wine-producing region across multiple continents, bottles whose individual values could fund significant military expeditions, their flavors representing the culmination of agricultural expertise developed over centuries. His Dalaran penthouse exists within the floating city's most exclusive residential district, offering panoramic views of the surrounding landscape while serving as his base of operations for northern business ventures. The magical stabilization systems that maintain this residence in perfect comfort, despite the city's constant movement, cost more to maintain annually than most kingdoms spend on public infrastructure. The transportation network that connects this property to his other holdings operates through private portal systems whose magical energy requirements consume resources that could power entire districts of lesser cities. The Darnassus estate represents perhaps his most politically sensitive acquisition, built literally within the branches of Teldrassil itself, through arrangements that required not merely enormous financial investment, but significant diplomatic maneuvering and strategic donations to Night Elf cultural preservation societies. The property exists in harmony with the World Tree's natural growth patterns, its chambers carved and shaped through techniques that enhance rather than damage the living wood, its gardens tended by druids whose services command premium compensation while ensuring the estate's integration with its mystical surroundings. His holdings in Shatrath City occupy an entire tier of the rebuilt metropolis, their terraced architecture taking advantage of the city's vertical structure while providing views that encompass both the lower city's bustling markets and the upper city's more refined commercial districts. These properties serve as neutral ground for his cross-faction business operations, their diplomatic immunity enabling transactions that would be impossible within purely alliance or horde territories. The magical protections surrounding these holdings ensure privacy for negotiations that involve parties whose mutual cooperation must remain invisible to their respective political authorities. What proves most fascinating about Uldric's morning routine is his complete disconnection from the daily struggles that define ordinary existence for millions of Azeroth's inhabitants. While common adventurers debate whether to spend their carefully accumulated gold on improved equipment or essential supplies like food and lodging, Uldric confronts entirely different categories of decision-making. Should he purchase the legendary sword being auctioned by a retiring hero for 2 million gold pieces, adding it to his collection of historical weapons, or invest that same amount in cornering the market on rare gems extracted from Outland's most dangerous mining operations? Should he expand his shipping empire by acquiring additional vessels for his cross-continental trade networks, or focus resources on developing new magical technologies that could revolutionize transportation efficiency? The morning continues with his personal stylist, a blood elf esthetician whose expertise in aristocratic presentation commands compensation that exceeds the annual budgets of most guild organizations. This morning's clothing selection presents options that transcend mere fashion into wearable statements of wealth and power. The casual attire under consideration includes boots crafted from leather, harvested from the rarest creatures in Northrend, each hide requiring expeditions that cost more than most people earn in lifetimes. The belt being considered features gems whose individual stones could fund small guild operations for months, their magical properties providing not merely aesthetic enhancement, but functional benefits that serve as status symbols recognizable to other members of the ultra-wealthy elite. The rings presented for his consideration represent more than jewelry. They constitute portable treasuries whose magical enchantments provide benefits that adventuring parties spend months pursuing through dangerous dungeon expeditions. One ring contains a trapped storm elemental whose power can be channeled for weather manipulation. Another holds crystallized time magic that enables minor temporal adjustments for schedule optimization. A third incorporates spatial distortion technology that creates portable storage dimensions exceeding the capacity of most guild banks. His transportation to the morning's appointments involves a carriage pulled by rare mounts whose individual values exceed those of most guild halls and their complete contents. These creatures, bred specifically for aristocratic transportation, possess capabilities that surpass those available to legendary heroes through normal gameplay progression. Their speed enables cross-continental travel within timeframes that make teleportation seem inefficient. Their endurance allows for journey continuation under circumstances that would defeat conventional transportation. Their intelligence provides navigation assistance that rivals magical guidance systems. But perhaps the most revealing aspect of Uldric's morning routine manifests in his observations during the carriage ride through Stormwind's trade district. As the vehicle passes through bustling markets where merchants hawking goods to adventurers seeking equipment upgrades, where vendors offering essential supplies to citizens struggling with daily survival needs, where craftsmen displaying their wares to customers carefully weighing purchase decisions against limited budgets, Uldric observes these scenes with the detached interest of someone watching an ant farm. The human activity below appears interesting, perhaps even entertaining in its complexity and energy, but remains utterly removed from his personal reality. The merchants negotiating prices that represent significant portions of their customers' total wealth. The adventurers carefully comparing equipment statistics to determine optimal resource allocation. The citizens calculating whether to purchase luxuries or maintain financial reserves for emergency situations. All of these economic interactions occur within frameworks that bear no relationship to Uldric's decision-making processes. His financial concerns operate on scales that render individual transactions meaningless. His resource allocation strategies consider factors that remain invisible to normal economic participants. His risk assessments incorporate variables that most people never encounter. This morning routine represents more than personal luxury. It demonstrates existence within a completely parallel universe where normal economic constraints simply cease to apply. The question of affordability never arises because nothing exists that could strain his financial resources. The concern about value assessment becomes meaningless when price differences that seem enormous to others register as statistical noise within his wealth calculations. The anxiety about financial security dissolves when your passive income generation exceeds the total economic output of major cities. Yet as the carriage approaches his destination, as the familiar rhythms of aristocratic morning routine near their conclusion, Aldrich remains unaware that this particular day will introduce complications that his wealth cannot simply purchase away, challenges that his resources cannot automatically resolve, and revelations that will forever alter his understanding of the systems that sustain his perfect isolation from the reality that surrounds him. The machinery of his empire operates with such smooth efficiency that he has never been forced to examine its human components. The elegant abstractions of his financial reports have never required him to contemplate their flesh and blood implications, and the comfortable distance maintained between his decisions and their consequences has never been compromised by direct exposure to the suffering that his comfort demands. This is life when you possess unlimited wealth in World of Warcraft, not merely the accumulation of resources beyond normal comprehension, but existence within social and economic structures that transform every aspect of daily experience into something fundamentally alien to ordinary human understanding. Where morning routines cost more than most people's lifetime achievements, where casual decisions reshape the destinies of entire communities, and where the greatest luxury becomes the maintenance of ignorance about the human cost required to sustain such magnificent isolation from reality. The foundation of Aldrich's astronomical fortune stretches back 15 years, to a moment of clarity that separated him from every other ambitious merchant scrambling for advantage in Stormwind's competitive commercial districts. While countless entrepreneurs focus their energies on selling finished weapons and armor to the endless stream of adventurers seeking equipment upgrades, Aldrich recognized a deeper truth that would reshape his understanding of wealth accumulation forever. The real power lay not in competing within existing markets, but in controlling the supply chains that made those markets possible in the first place. Instead of fighting for scraps within the crowded marketplace of finished goods, he began systematically acquiring mining rights, establishing exclusive contracts with ore suppliers, and creating vertical integration strategies that would make the most sophisticated economists weep with admiration. His first major breakthrough arrived during the chaotic opening of the Dark Portal, that moment when Azeroth's established economic order faced disruption from forces beyond the comprehension of most market participants. While other merchants saw only chaos and uncertainty in the dimensional rift that connected their world to the shattered realm of Outland, Aldrich perceived opportunity on scales that transcended normal commercial thinking. He correctly predicted that the sudden influx of exotic resources from Outland would crash certain traditional commodity markets, while creating massive demand for materials that had previously existed only in theoretical discussions among mages and alchemists. Using borrowed capital and leveraging his family's modest textile business as collateral, he systematically purchased enormous quantities of Outland mining contracts at bargain prices from panicked investors who feared the unknown implications of dimensional commerce. The gamble required courage that bordered on madness, financial commitments that threatened to destroy not merely his own future, but the accumulated wealth of 3 generations of his family's careful merchant activities. For months, as portal stability remained questionable and cross-dimensional trade relationships developed with painful uncertainty, Aldrich's investment appeared to represent catastrophic miscalculation that would reduce the Goldweave family from comfortable middle-class status to complete financial ruin. His relatives pleaded with him to abandon the outland ventures before they consumed everything the family had built through decades of patient commercial development. His advisors presented calculations demonstrating that his resource commitments exceeded rational risk tolerance by factors that made continued investment appear tantamount to gambling addiction. Yet when fell iron and adamantite became essential materials for equipment progression, when alchemists discovered that outland herbs possessed magical properties that revolutionized potion brewing, when engineers realized that dimensional crystals could enhance mechanical devices beyond previous technological limitations, Uldric found himself controlling nearly 30% of the total supply flowing into Azeroth's established markets. The profits proved astronomical beyond his most optimistic projections, but more importantly, they provided him with the capital foundation necessary for expanding his operations into territories that transcended traditional merchant activities entirely. The success of his outland investments enabled Uldric to implement what his goblin advisor privately calls the auction house algorithm, a sophisticated market manipulation system that operates on scales far beyond the simple buy low, sell high trading strategies attempted by amateur merchants throughout Azeroth's major cities. This represents coordinated economic warfare conducted through networks of subsidiary operations and shell companies that can create artificial scarcity in specific markets, corner entire commodity sectors, and manipulate pricing structures across multiple regions simultaneously, while maintaining the appearance of natural market fluctuations driven by supply and demand forces. Consider the elegant sophistication of his stranglehold on the rare herb market, a monopoly that extends far beyond simple resource accumulation into systematic behavioral manipulation of entire player populations. Through careful analysis of spawn timers, detailed studies of player movement patterns, and seasonal demand fluctuation calculations that rival military intelligence operations, his organization employs teams of dedicated collectors who harvest botanical materials with scientific precision that transforms gathering from casual activity into industrial process. But the truly diabolical brilliance of his herbal monopoly lies not in superior collection efficiency, but in strategic prevention of competitor access through timing manipulations that most victims never recognize as deliberate interference. His Darnassus operation maintains absolute control over Dreamfoil and Mountain Silversage distribution, not merely through having the most skilled collectors or the most efficient transportation networks, but through understanding that most players operate according to predictable schedules and behavioral patterns that can be systematically exploited for competitive advantage. His harvesting teams possess detailed intelligence about when casual herb gatherers typically conduct their farming activities, which zones they prefer for collection routes, and how long they persist in specific areas before abandoning attempts due to resource scarcity. Armed with this behavioral data, his operations systematically clear targeted areas exactly 15 minutes before casual players typically arrive, ensuring that independent gatherers find empty zones, experience frustration that discourages continued attempts, and ultimately purchase herbs from auction house listings at inflated prices without realizing they are purchasing from the same organization that prevented their independent collection efforts. The result creates a perfect economic trap that generates profit from both direct resource control and manipulation of competitor psychology. Casual players experience gathering as increasingly difficult and time-consuming, gradually concluding that purchasing herbs represents more efficient use of their limited playing time than continued attempts at independent collection. They transition from resource independence to market dependence, while the price manipulation ensures that their purchasing power flows steadily toward Gold Vault enterprises through auction house transactions that appear to represent normal market activity rather than systematic exploitation of artificial scarcity. but herbs represent merely one tentacle of the economic octopus that extends throughout every aspect of Azeroth's commercial infrastructure. His shipping empire spans every major port from Menethil Harbor to Ratchet, with seemingly independent cargo vessels moving goods between continents under contracts that create strategic dependencies extending far beyond simple transportation services. He does not merely transport cargo from point of origin to destination, but controls when shipments arrive at specific locations, creating deliberate delays and strategic surpluses that manipulate regional price differences for maximum profit extraction, while maintaining plausible explanations for delivery schedules that appear to result from weather conditions, political complications, or logistical challenges rather than calculated market manipulation. The Outland spice trade represents perhaps his most politically sensitive operation, demonstrating how profit optimization can transcend traditional factional boundaries when conducted with sufficient sophistication and diplomatic finesse. Despite his obvious alliance loyalties as a human noble with extensive business relationships throughout Stormwind's political establishment, Aldrich maintains profitable commercial arrangements within Horde territories through carefully cultivated networks of goblin intermediaries and neutral trading post operations that enable cross-faction commerce without triggering political complications that could jeopardize his standing within Alliance society. His business philosophy embraces a simple but revolutionary principle. Profit recognizes no faction loyalty. Economic advantage transcends political allegiance, and wealth accumulation serves interests that operate beyond the artificial boundaries created by territorial conflicts. These cross-faction business dealings require diplomatic skills that exceed those possessed by most professional ambassadors, navigating complex political sensitivities while maintaining profitable relationships that technically violate the spirit, if not the letter of wartime commerce restrictions. He simultaneously serves as one of Stormwind's largest taxpayers and primary military equipment suppliers, while functioning as a significant investor in Horde infrastructure projects that strengthen enemy economic capabilities. This dual loyalty creates ethical contradictions that would destroy most political careers. But Aldrich navigates these moral complexities with the amoral precision of someone who views politics as simply another market system that can be manipulated for personal advantage through careful resource allocation and strategic relationship management. His real estate portfolio demonstrates the same systematic approach to wealth concentration that characterizes all aspects of his commercial empire. That fishing village in Westfall was not purchased through impulse or casual investment opportunity, but represents a calculated component of a comprehensive strategy designed to control food production supply chains from resource extraction through processing, distribution, and retail sales. By systematically acquiring entire agricultural communities rather than individual properties, he has created vertical integration that eliminates market inefficiencies while concentrating every aspect of food production within his organizational control. The transformation of independent fishing families into dependent wage laborers occurred gradually enough to prevent organized resistance, while rapidly enough to ensure permanent economic dependency before alternative opportunities could develop. The villagers initially welcomed his investment as economic salvation that promised job security, infrastructure improvements, and integration into broader commercial networks that could provide stability their traditional subsistence activities could never guarantee. The terms of acquisition seemed generous, offering immediate cash payments for property rights, combined with guaranteed employment contracts that provided steady income and benefits that exceeded what fishing families could achieve through independent operations. Yet, as months passed into years, the villagers gradually discovered that their apparent economic salvation had transformed into gilded servitude that controlled every aspect of their daily existence. Their fishing quotas became determined by corporate efficiency analysts rather than traditional knowledge about sustainable harvesting practices. Their catch destinations were redirected from local consumption toward export markets that provided maximum profit margins rather than community food security. Even their family planning decisions required approval from Gold Vault management representatives, as housing assignments and resource allocations depended on demographic calculations that treated human reproduction as a variable in corporate production optimization rather than a personal choice, reflecting individual desires and cultural traditions. The children growing up in this transformed community receive education in literacy and basics, mathematics, while systematic exclusion of traditional maritime knowledge ensures they lack the skills necessary to return to independent fishing operations. Within a generation, these families will possess neither the knowledge nor the equipment necessary for autonomous survival. Their cultural identity dissolved into corporate employment structures that provide material security at the cost of everything that previously defined their community's character and historical continuity. His outland mining operations represent similar transformation strategies implemented on industrial scales that dwarf his Azeroth holdings in scope and systematic efficiency. Entire communities of displaced Draenei and desperate Orc refugees exist solely to support his resource extraction enterprises, their survival dependent on employment contracts that reshape traditional social structures, cultural practices, and economic relationships beyond recognition. These are not merely business ventures generating profit through efficient resource extraction, but comprehensive colonization projects that systematically eliminate indigenous autonomy while creating permanent dependencies that prevent community organization or resistance to corporate control. The most disturbing aspect of Aldrich's empire lies not in its enormous scale or impressive efficiency, but in its sustainability model that generates wealth through systematic exploitation of information, asymmetries, and market manipulation, rather than through productive activities that create genuine value for society. Unlike adventurers who accumulate resources through heroic achievements that solve actual problems, or craftsmen who generate income through creating goods that serve useful purposes, his system extracts money from less informed market participants and concentrates it upward through mechanisms that impoverish others without producing anything beneficial for broader community welfare. Every transaction within his network operates as a zero-sum extraction process that transfers wealth from individuals who lack access to comprehensive market information toward an organization that possesses systematic advantages in data collection, analysis, and strategic implementation. The morning financial briefings that Gazlo presents do not merely cover profit calculations, but include detailed intelligence analysis of competitor activities, political developments that might affect trade regulations, social trends that could influence consumer behavior patterns, and strategic forecasting that enables proactive responses to changes that most market participants cannot anticipate or understand. The teams of analysts whose sole responsibility involves predicting which new zones might open for commercial development, which faction conflicts might create resource scarcity opportunities, which technological innovations could disrupt established supply chains, and how political changes might generate new possibilities for profit extraction. This level of strategic thinking operates on temporal scales that humble individual players whose planning rarely extends beyond weekly raid schedules or daily quest rotations, while Aldrich implements investment strategies based on projected political developments and economic trends spanning multiple years into the future. The accumulated result of 15 years of systematic market manipulation and supply chain control has created an economic empire that touches virtually every aspect of commercial activity throughout Azeroth, while remaining largely invisible to the millions of people whose daily economic decisions unwittingly contribute to its continued growth and consolidation. The fishing families of Westfall, the herb gatherers of Kalimdor, the mining communities of Outland, and countless other populations whose labor generates the wealth that sustains aristocratic luxury, remain unaware that their individual struggles for survival serve broader strategic purposes that transcend their personal understanding or control. This is the true foundation upon which extreme wealth operates within Azeroth's economic systems. Not through superior individual achievement or beneficial social contribution, but through systematic manipulation of market structures that extract value from less informed participants while concentrating resources among individuals who possess sufficient capital to implement comprehensive exploitation strategies. The elegant horror of such systems lies in their complete legal legitimacy, their genuine efficiency in resource allocation, and their ability to generate authentic gratitude from populations whose economic circumstances improve even as their autonomy disappears forever. The day's schedule includes a journey that has been carefully planned for months, an educational expedition to the family's manufacturing interests in Stormwind's mid-level industrial districts that represents a necessary component of Aldrich's preparation for inheriting greater responsibilities within the Gold Vault Enterprises hierarchy. This visit has been designed to provide him with general understanding of the commercial operations that fund his lifestyle, while carefully shielding him from aspects of those operations that might disturb his comfortable assumptions about the nature and morality of his family's business activities. The tour represents education in aristocratic responsibility, training for duties he will inherit, and preparation for oversight roles that require theoretical knowledge of production processes without direct exposure to their human implications. Aldrich approaches this obligation with the mild interest of someone fulfilling an educational requirement whose importance he recognizes without feeling genuine enthusiasm for its execution. He understands the necessity of comprehending family business operations, accepts his need to prepare for future leadership responsibilities, and acknowledges the value of gaining practical experience in management and oversight functions. Yet his understanding of these necessities exists within the comfortable abstractions of his aristocratic education, theoretical knowledge that has never been tested against practical reality, academic preparation that has never confronted the human cost of the systems he is learning to control and perpetuate. The transportation arranged for this expedition represents engineering marvels that transcend mere luxury into technological artistry. The gyrocopter that will carry him toward the manufacturing districts features hull construction, incorporating rare metals whose individual components cost more than most guild halls, interior appointments that rival royal chambers in comfort and aesthetic sophistication, and magical enhancement systems that maintain perfect environmental conditions regardless of external circumstances. The vehicle's defensive capabilities include magical shields that could deflect siege weapons, spatial distortion fields that render the craft effectively invisible to ground observation, and emergency teleportation systems that could evacuate passengers to safety from virtually any conceivable threat scenario. Even during transit toward industrial zones, Aldrich remains isolated from external reality through technological barriers that maintain his separation from the world beyond the craft's armored transparency surfaces. The journey occurs within carefully controlled conditions that filter air quality, regulate temperature and humidity, modulate lighting levels, and eliminate noise pollution that might compromise passenger comfort. The route has been planned to showcase the most favorable aspects of Stormwind's industrial development while avoiding areas where manufacturing activities might present disturbing visual evidence of their environmental or social consequences. As the gyrocopter approaches the designated manufacturing district, the landscape below begins transitioning from the aesthetic refinement of noble residential areas toward the utilitarian functionality of industrial zones. The architecture becomes more concerned with efficiency than beauty, building designs prioritizing productive capacity over visual appeal, spatial arrangements optimized for workflow rather than artistic impression, Yet even these changes remain abstract from Aldrich's elevated perspective. Scenery observed through protective barriers that maintain his separation from the reality of industrial life, while presenting sanitized images that support comfortable assumptions about the nature of commercial production. The manufacturing district selected for his educational tour represents a careful compromise between operational necessity and aristocratic sensibility. Here, Gold Vault Enterprises maintains production facilities designed to minimize obvious environmental degradation, while maximizing efficiency and profitability through methods that remain invisible to casual observation. The buildings appear clean by industrial standards, their exterior maintenance adequate to prevent immediate aesthetic offense to visiting nobility. The surrounding infrastructure shows evidence of regular upkeep, walkways maintained to reasonable safety standards, and air filtration systems operating at levels sufficient to prevent immediate health hazards for aristocratic visitors. The facility managers who greet Aldrich's arrival demonstrate the careful preparation that has preceded this visit for weeks. Every aspect of his reception has been choreographed to present optimal impressions of operational competence, worker satisfaction, and production efficiency. The greeting party includes department supervisors whose education and cultural background enable comfortable communication with noble visitors, administrative personnel whose professional presentation meets aristocratic expectations, and technical specialists whose expertise can address sophisticated questions about production processes without revealing uncomfortable details about working conditions or labor practices. The initial briefing occurs within administrative sections that feel more similar to Aldrich's familiar environment than to typical industrial spaces. These offices feature comfortable furnishings, adequate lighting, reasonable air quality, and decoration that projects competence without ostentation. The personnel who conduct these briefings speak his cultural language, share his educational references, understand his concerns and priorities, and present information using frameworks that reinforce his existing assumptions about the relationship between business success and social benefit. Their reports emphasize production statistics that demonstrate impressive efficiency gains, revenue figures that justify continued confidence in operational management, profit margins that validate strategic decisions, and growth projections that suggest expanding opportunities for further development. The data presentation focuses on numerical achievements while carefully avoiding discussion of the methods through which those achievements are obtained. Environmental impact assessments present sanitized summaries that minimize obvious problems while emphasizing compliance with regulations that have been carefully structured to permit profitable operations. Labor relations reports describe worker satisfaction surveys and benefit programs while omitting information about working conditions, safety incidents, or employee turnover rates. Everything they present confirms Aldrich's comfortable assumptions about the righteousness of family enterprises, the competence of management oversight, the satisfaction of worker populations, and the beneficial nature of corporate activities for broader community welfare. The production facilities they describe sound efficient and humane. The business practices appear ethical and sustainable, and the overall operation seems to represent enlightened capitalism that serves everyone's interests while generating appropriate profits for investment and expansion. The transition from administrative briefings to actual production observation occurs gradually, with Aldrich's exposure to manufacturing reality carefully controlled through predetermined routes that present selected aspects of industrial operations, while avoiding areas where normal working conditions might challenge his comfortable understanding of corporate benevolence. The sections he observes have been prepared specifically for noble visitation, cleaned beyond normal standards, organized to present favorable impressions, and staffed with workers chosen for their appearance, demeanor, and ability to project satisfaction with their employment circumstances. Yet even within these carefully curated spaces, subtle details begin penetrating Aldrich's awareness that do not align perfectly with the sanitized presentations he received during the administrative briefings. The machinery operates with noise levels that would become unbearable during extended exposure, though his visit duration remains too brief for comfort to deteriorate into serious distress. The air quality, while acceptable for short-term noble exposure, carries chemical traces that suggest prolonged breathing might create cumulative health problems for workers who lack access to magical filtration systems. The pace of production requires constant motion and attention that would exhaust aristocratic sensibilities within hours, though the workers maintain these rhythms throughout shifts lasting far longer than noble attention spans could sustain. The workers he encounters during this sanitized tour have received extensive coaching in appropriate responses to aristocratic inquiry. Their expressions of gratitude for employment opportunities, satisfaction with working conditions, and loyalty to Gold Vault management reflect careful rehearsal, rather than spontaneous sentiment. Their words emphasize positive aspects of their situation while avoiding mention of safety concerns, health problems, or family circumstances that might complicate comfortable narratives about mutual benefit and shared prosperity. Their performance serves to reinforce Aldrich's understanding of his family's enterprises as benevolent institutions that provide essential services while treating employees with appropriate consideration and respect. But as the morning tour progresses, as Aldrich's exposure to industrial reality extends beyond the brief, sanitized glimpses originally planned, the careful choreography that maintains his comfortable ignorance encounters complications that no amount of preparation could entirely prevent. The transportation systems that should return him safely to aristocratic districts experience minor magical disruptions that cascade into significant delays, forcing him to remain within industrial zones far longer than protocols consider appropriate for noble safety and comfort. The initial system failure appears trivial, a brief fluctuation in the gyrocopter's navigation array that backup systems should resolve within minutes. Under normal circumstances, such minor technical difficulties would be logged for routine maintenance review and quickly forgotten. Another small imperfection in the vast technological infrastructure that sustains aristocratic existence. The backup systems engage automatically, diagnostic routines verify operational integrity, and emergency protocols initiate standard recovery procedures designed to restore normal function with minimal passenger inconvenience or schedule disruption. Yet in those crucial minutes, while backup systems attempt to compensate for the navigation failure, while magical restoration protocols work to re-establish normal operational parameters, while technical specialists struggle to diagnose the source of the mysterious disruption, the gyrocopter's flight path deviates by mere kilometers from its carefully planned route. The deviation represents such a minor variation that it barely qualifies as a significant error, the displacement so small that correction should occur almost immediately, the impact on arrival schedule negligible enough to avoid serious inconvenience for subsequent appointments. But those few kilometers of unplanned deviation carry the gyrocopter over sections of Stormwind's industrial complex that were never intended for aristocratic observation. Areas that exist outside the carefully maintained routes designed to shield nobility from uncomfortable realities. Zones where normal production operations proceed without the sanitization and preparation that make industrial activity acceptable for noble viewing. Through the craft's transparency barriers, Aldrich glimpses spaces that his education never prepared him to witness, conditions that his comfortable assumptions cannot easily accommodate, realities that challenge every assumption his upbringing has encouraged him to maintain about the nature of commercial production and its relationship to worker welfare. The manufacturing facilities visible during these unplanned moments of observation operate at levels of intensity and environmental degradation that would horrify aristocratic sensibilities. Workers move through air that shimmers with toxic particles, concentrated enough to be visible to naked observation. Their bodies adapted through generational exposure to atmospheric conditions that would kill unprotected nobles within minutes. Children whose age should restrict them to educational activities instead tend machinery that towers above them like predatory beasts, their small size making them valuable for accessing spaces where adult bodies cannot fit. Their nimble fingers essential for maintenance tasks that larger hands cannot perform with adequate precision. The safety equipment visible in these unauthorized glimpses consists primarily of cloth coverings and basic eye protection, rather than the comprehensive magical shields that protect workers in areas prepared for noble inspection. The production pace exceeds sustainable human limits, with employees maintaining output rates through stimulant consumption and exhaustion management techniques that sacrifice long-term health for short-term productivity. The environmental controls that maintain acceptable air quality in sanitized zones are absent from normal production areas, where ventilation systems operate only at levels necessary to prevent immediate worker collapse, rather than ensure long-term respiratory health. The backup systems successfully restore normal navigation function, correcting the course deviation and returning the gyrocopter to its approved flight path with mechanical precision that eliminates evidence of the temporary malfunction. The unauthorized observations last only moments before technological competence reasserts control over Aldrich's visual access to industrial reality. Yet those brief glimpses of authentic working conditions create small but persistent cracks in the perfect barrier that has previously separated his consciousness from awareness of the human cost required to sustain his comfortable existence. The transportation disruption that should have ended with successful course correction instead escalates when the gyrocopter approaches the landing platform designated for noble passenger transfer. The same magical instabilities that caused the initial navigation failure have affected ground-based transportation networks throughout the industrial district, creating cascade effects that overwhelm the technological infrastructure designed to maintain smooth, aristocratic mobility. The maglev systems that enable rapid transit between different zones experience synchronization failures that create dangerous resonance patterns in their guidance networks. As Aldrich observes from his elevated position, a section of maglev tunnel infrastructure succumbs to stress factors that exceed design tolerances, the superstructure collapsing in a cascade of twisted metal and shattered stone that creates a chasm blocking transportation routes throughout the district. Emergency response teams mobilize immediately, their movements coordinated through communication networks that demonstrate impressive organizational efficiency even under crisis conditions. Yet the scale of the infrastructure failure becomes apparent as bodies emerge from the wreckage at irregular intervals, some moving with painful evidence of injury, others carried with the stillness that speaks of damage beyond any possibility of repair. The disaster represents systematic failure of infrastructure that Aldrich had never considered as potentially vulnerable, breakdown of technological systems he had never been required to contemplate, consequences of engineering decisions whose human implications he had never been asked to evaluate. The workers struggling in the rubble are people whose existence his education had never acknowledged, whose suffering his comfortable assumptions had never incorporated, whose deaths his moral framework had never been taught to count as significant or meaningful within broader calculations of social benefit and commercial success. The transportation crisis forces modifications to Aldrich's planned return journey that violate every protocol designed to maintain appropriate separation between aristocratic passengers and uncontrolled industrial environments. With normal routes blocked by infrastructure collapse, with emergency services redirecting traffic through areas normally avoided by noble transportation, with backup systems overwhelmed by demand that exceeds capacity designed for routine operations. Aldrich faces his first encounter with reality, unfiltered by the careful preparation and sanitization that usually shields aristocratic consciousness from uncomfortable truth. The transportation alternatives available to Aldrich represent a complete violation of every principle that governs aristocratic mobility throughout Azeroth's civilized regions. With normal passenger routes blocked by infrastructure collapse, with emergency services overwhelmed by rescue operations that require every available vehicle for medical evacuation, with backup systems redirected toward crisis management rather than maintaining noble comfort, the only viable option involves utilizing maintenance transportation designed for technical personnel rather than aristocratic passengers. The vehicle offered lacks every amenity that makes noble travel bearable. Environmental filtration systems that ensure breathable air quality, magical comfort enchantments that maintain optimal temperature and humidity, defensive barriers that provide protection from external threats, and privacy shields that prevent unwanted observation by common populations. The maintenance supervisor who coordinates this emergency transportation, a weathered dwarf whose 4 decades of industrial service show clearly in his scarred hands and permanently stained clothing, explains the situation with patient professionalism that cannot entirely mask his incredulity at finding himself responsible for aristocratic welfare. The route to the noble districts requires traveling through sections of the industrial complex that violate every standard normally applied to aristocratic transportation. The air quality fails to meet even basic health requirements for noble respiratory systems. The visual environment includes scenes that contradict comfortable assumptions about commercial production, and the journey duration will expose Aldrich to sustained contact with industrial reality, rather than the brief, sanitized glimpses that constitute normal aristocratic education about business operations. Yet practical necessity overrides protocol considerations, and something deeper than mere convenience compels Aldrich to accept these unacceptable conditions. The brief glimpses of authentic working conditions that he observed during the navigation failure have awakened intellectual curiosity that his privileged education had never allowed him to recognize or explore. The systematic preparation that usually shields aristocratic consciousness from uncomfortable reality has been disrupted by circumstances beyond organizational control, creating an opportunity for direct observation that may never recur within the carefully managed structure of his normal existence. The maintenance vehicle possesses all the aesthetic appeal of industrial equipment designed for function rather than passenger comfort. The seats prioritize durability over cushioning. The controls emphasize efficiency rather than elegance. The storage compartments contain tools and spare parts rather than luxury amenities. For someone accustomed to transportation that insulates passengers from external conditions while surrounding them with every conceivable comfort, the vehicle represents shocking reduction in both status and physical pleasure. Yet as the journey begins through routes that bypass the carefully maintained corridors designed for aristocratic travel, Aldrich discovers that decreased comfort enables increased contact with reality, that his normal transportation systems are specifically designed to prevent. The industrial zones through which they travel operate at levels of desperation and intensity that dwarf even the controlled chaos he witnessed during the infrastructure collapse. Here, the production facilities that generate wealth supporting aristocratic existence reveal their authentic character when not prepared for noble observation. Workers move through environments that would kill unprotected aristocrats within minutes, their bodies adapted through generational exposure to atmospheric conditions that destroy human health as systematically as warfare destroys human life. The air itself appears to writhe with toxic particles, concentrated enough to create visible distortion effects. Chemical contamination so severe that breathing becomes laborious, even for passengers protected by the maintenance vehicle's minimal filtration systems. The machinery operates beyond safe parameters, driven by production quotas that prioritize output over worker welfare, efficiency calculations that treat human health as an acceptable cost of maintaining profit margins that fund aristocratic lifestyle. Children work alongside adults in systematic violation of safety protocols that exist primarily to satisfy legal requirements rather than protect worker welfare. Their small bodies provide access to machinery spaces where adult workers cannot perform necessary maintenance. Their nimble fingers valuable for reaching components that larger hands cannot manipulate with adequate precision. Their expendable status ensuring that workplace accidents result in replacement rather than improved safety measures. The supervisor operating the maintenance vehicle provides commentary that reveals comprehensive understanding of the gap between official policies and operational reality. Safety regulations that appear comprehensive on legal documents are routinely ignored when enforcement would conflict with production requirements that determine worker employment security. Environmental protection standards that satisfy governmental oversight exist primarily in administrative reports, while actual working conditions deteriorate according to economic pressures that demand maximum output at minimum cost. Worker welfare programs that appear generous in corporate publicity materials provide minimal actual protection against industrial hazards that affect employee health through cumulative exposure rather than dramatic accidents. The housing districts surrounding major production facilities demonstrate how economic dependency extends beyond workplace control into comprehensive social management that shapes every aspect of worker existence. Families live in company-provided accommodations whose quality reflects their productive value rather than human dignity. Their housing assignments determined by efficiency analysts rather than personal preference or community relationships. The neighborhoods lack amenities that aristocratic districts consider essential. Adequate lighting, reliable water systems, waste management that prevents disease, recreational spaces where children can engage in normal developmental activities rather than preparation for industrial labor. Educational facilities in these communities provide training in literacy and basic mathematics, while systematically excluding instruction that might enable workers to understand their situation within broader economic structures or develop capabilities that could support independent economic activity. Children learn technical skills that prepare them for industrial employment while remaining ignorant of agricultural knowledge. Traditional crafts, commercial principles, or organizational strategies that previous generations used to maintain community autonomy and cultural identity. The medical facilities that serve these populations operate according to priorities that emphasize maintaining worker productivity rather than promoting genuine health and welfare. Treatment focuses on injuries and illnesses that immediately affect work performance, while ignoring chronic conditions that develop through long-term exposure to industrial environments. Preventive care remains limited to interventions that reduce obvious workplace accidents rather than comprehensive health maintenance that would require addressing environmental causes of systematic physical deterioration. As the journey continues through increasingly desperate districts, Aldrich begins encountering populations whose circumstances reveal the true human foundation upon which his aristocratic existence depends. Refugees from various military conflicts throughout Azeroth's turbulent recent history work under employment contracts that technically fulfill every promise made during their recruitment, while creating circumstances that ensure permanent economic subordination. Families displaced from Theramore, Gilneas, South Shore, and countless smaller communities destroyed by warfare find themselves grateful for any opportunity that provides basic survival, while gradually discovering that their salvation requires surrendering every aspect of autonomy and cultural identity that previously defined their community existence. The agricultural processing facilities demonstrate how food production has been reorganized according to export profit margins rather than local nutritional security. Traditional farming communities that historically grew diverse crops for regional consumption now focus exclusively on commodity production that generates maximum revenue through international trade networks. Families that once maintained food sovereignty through subsistence agriculture now depend entirely on company stores for nutritional needs, purchasing processed foods manufactured from crops they grow but cannot afford to consume in their natural form. The transformation occurs gradually enough to prevent organized resistance while rapidly enough to ensure permanent dependency before alternative economic strategies can develop. Workers receive improved housing, medical care, and educational opportunities for their children while losing the knowledge and resources necessary for independent survival. Within a single generation, these communities lose the practical skills, social structures, and cultural knowledge that previously enabled autonomous existence. Their accumulated wisdom dissolved into corporate employment relationships that provide security at the cost of freedom. Mining operations in the distant sections of the industrial complex employ similar transformation strategies on populations whose traditional lifestyles depended on relationships with their natural environment that corporate efficiency considers primitive and wasteful. Indigenous communities that once managed resource extraction through sustainable practices developed over centuries of careful observation and gradual adaptation find themselves displaced by industrial techniques that prioritize short-term extraction over long-term environmental stability. The workers in these facilities demonstrate remarkable competence and dedication, despite conditions that would demoralize aristocratic sensibilities within hours of exposure. Their technical knowledge exceeds that required for their assigned tasks. Their problem-solving capabilities rival those of formally educated engineers, and their commitment to collective welfare puts aristocratic individualism to shame. Yet their expertise and dedication serve systems that provide them with minimal compensation while generating enormous profits for distant investors who never witness the human cost of their returns. The journey progresses through zones where the environmental consequences of industrial production become impossible to ignore or rationalize through comfortable abstractions. Waterways that once supported fishing communities now flow with chemical runoff that eliminates aquatic life while creating downstream health problems for populations too poor to relocate to safer areas. Agricultural zones surrounding manufacturing facilities produce crops contaminated with industrial waste that affects soil fertility for generations, while forcing farming families to choose between economic survival and environmental stewardship. The transportation infrastructure connecting these various industrial zones operates according to efficiency calculations that prioritize cargo movement over worker welfare or environmental protection. The roads suffer from constant heavy vehicle traffic that creates dust clouds containing metallic particles from brake systems and tire wear, while maintenance schedules minimize interruption to commercial activities rather than ensuring safe passage for pedestrian traffic. Railway systems transport raw materials and finished goods according to schedules that require round-the-clock operations through residential areas, with noise pollution and chemical emissions affecting sleep patterns and respiratory health for families whose housing options remain limited by employment requirements. During a refueling stop at a maintenance depot that serves as operational headquarters for technical personnel who maintain industrial infrastructure throughout the district, Aldrich encounters workers whose expertise enables the continued functioning of systems that support aristocratic existence, while their own living conditions reveal the true priorities of the economic structures they serve. These individuals possess comprehensive understanding of complex technological systems. Their diagnostic capabilities exceed those of most formally trained engineers, and their innovative solutions to technical problems demonstrate creative intelligence that rivals aristocratic education. Yet they live in housing that aristocratic districts would consider uninhabitable, consume food that would be rejected as unsuitable for aristocratic pets, and breathe air that would trigger immediate evacuation procedures if detected in noble residential areas. Their willingness to share information about their working conditions and family circumstances provides Aldrich with perspectives that his education systematically excluded from consideration. They describe industrial accidents that destroy entire family economic foundations, while corporate insurance policies provide minimal compensation for permanent disabilities that eliminate employment prospects. They explain how educational systems train their children for industrial labor, while ensuring they lack knowledge necessary for agricultural self-sufficiency or independent craft production. They detail housing policies that appear generous, while creating dependencies that prevent geographic mobility or alternative employment options. The conversations reveal systematic organizational structures that create the illusion of worker choice and opportunity, while ensuring that all available alternatives reinforce corporate dependency. Employment contracts that promise advancement opportunities lead to positions with greater responsibility but proportionally minimal compensation increases. Training programs that appear to provide valuable skills actually prepare workers for specialized tasks that have no application outside corporate industrial systems. Recreational facilities that seem to demonstrate corporate concern for worker welfare actually serve to prevent social organization and cultural development that might enable collective resistance to exploitative working conditions. Most disturbing to Aldrich's awakening consciousness is the recognition that these workers speak without bitterness or accusation about circumstances that should provoke outrage and resistance. Their acceptance of conditions that would horrify aristocratic sensibilities reflects not ignorance or stupidity, but adaptation to realities that offer no viable alternatives. Their resilience in the face of systematic exploitation demonstrates human capacity for survival under circumstances that elite privilege has never forced him to contemplate or imagine. The continuation of the journey toward the aristocratic districts takes them through transitional zones where the character of the industrial complex begins shifting from purely utilitarian production toward aesthetic consideration for noble sensibilities. Here, the differences in maintenance standards, environmental quality, and general living conditions become starkly apparent as the route moves from spaces designed for maximum production efficiency toward areas where human comfort receives some consideration. The contrast reveals the artificial nature of boundaries that separate aristocratic existence from worker reality, the deliberate construction of barriers that prevent noble awareness of exploitation costs, and the conscious resource allocation that prioritizes aesthetic pleasure over human welfare. The improved conditions of transitional zones result not from sudden abundance of available resources, but from policy decisions that redirect materials, labor, and technical expertise away from worker districts toward maintaining perfect environments that shield nobility from uncomfortable awareness of suffering that sustains their existence. The same construction materials, maintenance personnel, and technological systems that could dramatically improve conditions in production areas instead focus on ensuring that aristocratic transportation routes present acceptable visual experiences that support comfortable assumptions about the benevolent nature of commercial enterprise. As evening shadows begin falling across the industrial landscape, as the maintenance vehicle finally approaches the boundaries of aristocratic territory where normal protocols can resume operation, Aldrich finds himself profoundly changed by sustained exposure to realities that his privileged existence was designed to prevent him from witnessing. The comfortable ignorance that previously enabled him to enjoy luxury without moral complications has been replaced by knowledge that will forever burden his consciousness with awareness of the human cost required to sustain his material comfort and social position. The return to aristocratic territory occurs as evening shadows begin stretching across Stormwind's carefully manicured landscape. The familiar golden light filtering through enchanted crystal arrays that have maintained their perfect illumination for decades without requiring conscious attention from the populations they serve. The maintenance vehicle approaches the boundaries where industrial functionality yields to aesthetic consideration, where environmental controls prioritize comfort over efficiency, where every surface reflects the accumulated wealth of generations rather than the immediate demands of productive necessity. Yet Aldrich observes these familiar sights with consciousness fundamentally altered by sustained exposure to realities that his privileged existence was specifically designed to prevent him from witnessing or understanding. The same marble pathways that welcomed his morning departure now seem to gleam with different significance, their polished surfaces maintained through labor that he can no longer perceive as abstract economic activity. The gardens that provide visual pleasure through carefully cultivated beauty now reveal themselves as conscious choices to prioritize aesthetic satisfaction over human welfare. Their exotic plants requiring resources that could address basic nutritional needs for thousands of families while serving purely decorative purposes for aristocratic enjoyment. The architectural magnificence that previously inspired comfortable pride in family achievement now appears as evidence of systematic resource concentration that deprives others of materials necessary for adequate shelter, safety, and dignity. The servants who greet his arrival demonstrate the same choreographed efficiency that has characterized his household management throughout his life. Their movements coordinated through years of practice, their attention focused entirely on ensuring his comfort and meeting anticipated needs before he recognizes them himself. Yet his recent exposure to industrial working conditions enables him to perceive these domestic relationships through perspectives that his education systematically excluded from consideration. The servant's practiced competence reflects adaptation to circumstances that require constant suppression of personal needs and desires in service to aristocratic comfort. Their professional demeanor masking the psychological cost of existing primarily as extensions of another person's will, rather than autonomous individuals with legitimate aspirations and concerns. Their efficiency in attending to his needs while maintaining emotional distance that preserves their psychological independence reveals survival strategies developed by populations whose economic security depends entirely on satisfying the preferences of individuals who possess absolute power over their material circumstances. The gratitude they express for employment opportunities, the satisfaction they project regarding their working conditions, and the loyalty they demonstrate toward family enterprises reflect complex negotiations between authentic appreciation for relative privilege and recognition that their alternatives remain severely limited by economic structures beyond their control. Evening preparations proceed according to familiar rituals that have shaped aristocratic life for generations. Yet Aldrich experiences these routine activities with heightened awareness of their cost and meaning that transforms comfortable habits into moral challenges. The clothing selected for dinner represents choices between competing uses of resources that could provide essential needs for numerous families rather than aesthetic pleasure for individual satisfaction. The food preparation requires ingredients whose acquisition involves systematic exploitation of agricultural communities whose survival depends on producing luxury items they cannot afford to consume themselves. Even the lighting that illuminates his chambers operates through magical systems whose energy requirements could power entire districts while serving purely decorative purposes in aristocratic environments. The evening brings the monthly gathering of the Platinum Circle, an organization whose existence remains unknown to governmental authorities, military intelligence networks, or journalistic investigation, despite wielding influence that exceeds that of most recognized political institutions throughout Azeroth's civilized territories. The membership represents individuals whose wealth transcends normal economic categories, whose political connections span factional boundaries, and whose strategic coordination enables continental policy manipulation through methods that maintain complete invisibility to public oversight or democratic accountability. The venue selected for tonight's gathering demonstrates the resources available to individuals who operate beyond conventional limitations of law, politics, or social expectations, rather than meeting in terrestrial locations that might attract unwanted attention or provide evidence of their coordination. They convene within dimensional pocket spaces accessible only through teleportation keys, whose magical complexity requires expenditures that exceed the operating budgets of major cities. The meeting chambers exist independently of normal spatial relationships, their architecture defying conventional understanding of what constitutes structurally possible. Their privacy protections operating through enchantments so sophisticated that even legendary archmages could not penetrate their communication security. Aldrich arrives through portal transportation that deposits him directly into reception areas whose luxury transcends anything available through normal commercial services. The dimensional architecture incorporates materials that should not technically exist according to established magical theory, construction techniques that violate known principles of arcane engineering, and aesthetic appointments that represent artistic achievement beyond the capabilities of conventional craftsmen. The furniture incorporates rare woods from trees that grow only in alternate dimensional forests, upholstery woven from fibers produced by creatures whose existence remains theoretical to most magical researchers, and decorative elements carved from crystallized time itself by artisans whose techniques remain incomprehensible to traditional understanding. The guest list for tonight's gathering reads like a catalogue of shadow power brokers whose influence shapes continental affairs, while their names remain absent from public recognition or historical documentation. Lady Morvain Duskweaver represents night elf interests that transcend traditional Kaldorei political structures, her timber empire encompassing virtually every major forest operation throughout Kalimdor, while her wealth derives from sources that predate recorded history. Baron Thaddeus Ironforge commands dwarven industrial complexes whose production capabilities exceed those of recognized governmental enterprises, his manufacturing networks producing 70% of all advanced engineering components utilized by both Alliance and Horde military forces, while maintaining complete independence from official oversight or regulation. Duchess Seraphina Moonwhisper embodies Blood Elf financial sophistication that survived the destruction of Silvermoon City through investment strategies so advanced that her current wealth appears to have emerged spontaneously rather than through identifiable accumulation processes. Her mysterious fortune enables economic interventions that reshape entire regional economies, while her political connections extend through diplomatic networks that operate independently of recognized governmental relationships. These individuals gather not to pursue personal wealth accumulation, as that challenge has long been resolved through methods that render normal economic constraints irrelevant to their decision-making, but to coordinate strategic interventions that shape civilizational development according to their collective preferences. The conversations that unfold during these gatherings focus on topics that would appear theoretical to most political leaders, but represent practical implementation challenges for individuals who possess resources necessary to transform abstract possibilities into concrete reality. Tonight's primary agenda addresses emerging opportunities created by the ongoing crisis in Northrend, where public attention remains focused on heroic expeditions and military campaigns, while the truly significant developments involve territorial reorganization and resource acquisition possibilities that could reshape continental power structures for generations. Lady Duskweaver presents comprehensive analysis of Northrend's agricultural potential, her intelligence networks having identified soil conditions and climatic patterns that could support food production on scales sufficient to eliminate Azeroth's dependence on traditional farming regions currently controlled by numerous independent political entities. Her proposal involves establishing agricultural colonies throughout the Borean tundra and Dragonblight regions before governmental authorities implement regulatory oversight that might complicate private sector development initiatives. The territorial acquisition strategy requires coordinated timing that ensures exclusive access to optimal locations while maintaining plausible cover for activities that might attract unwanted political attention. Baron Ironforge contributes strategic assessments of Northrend's mineral wealth, his geological surveys revealing resource deposits that exceed the combined value of all previously known mining operations throughout both Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor territories combined. His extraction proposals involve technological innovations that could accelerate resource recovery beyond sustainable environmental limits, while generating profits that would dwarf current industrial revenues. The implementation timeline requires rapid deployment of extraction infrastructure before indigenous populations or governmental entities establish territorial claims that might interfere with optimal exploitation strategies. Duchess Moonwhisper approaches continental development through more sophisticated techniques that avoid direct territorial acquisition in favor of systematic destabilization that creates economic opportunities through induced crisis management. Her proposal involves providing strategic funding to multiple competing factions within Northrend political structures, ensuring that no single group achieves decisive control while maintaining perpetual conflict that prevents effective governance and keeps property values artificially depressed. The strategy enables eventual territorial acquisition at dramatically reduced costs while providing plausible explanations for ownership transfers that appear to result from natural market forces rather than coordinated manipulation. These strategic discussions occur over dining experiences that represent culinary impossibilities achieved through resource expenditures that exceed the gross domestic product of minor kingdoms. The preparation alone requires ingredients whose acquisition involves dimensional travel, temporal manipulation, and environmental intervention that reshape entire ecosystems according to gastronomic preferences. Appetizers feature vegetables cultivated in soil, enriched with ground pearls harvested from ocean depths, accessible only through magical pressure adaptation. Their flavor enhanced through growing techniques that consume more magical energy than most cities require for basic infrastructure operation. The main course incorporates proteins from creatures that exist only within alternate dimensional spaces, accessed through dimensional rifts whose maintenance costs could fund comprehensive social welfare programs for entire populations while serving purely aesthetic purposes for aristocratic entertainment. The preparation techniques require culinary expertise that represents lifelong dedication to skills whose application serves exclusively elite consumption rather than broader nutritional welfare. Each dish represents systematic prioritization of individual pleasure over collective welfare, conscious resource allocation that transforms basic human needs into luxury commodities accessible only to populations whose wealth transcends normal economic limitations. The wine selection demonstrates temporal manipulation techniques that create vintage characteristics impossible through conventional aging processes. Bottles whose contents have experienced subjective centuries of development within temporal stasis fields that cost fortunes to maintain while producing beverages whose consumption represents pure indulgence rather than nutritional necessity. The magical preservation systems that enable such wine collections consume energy that could power entire cities while serving purely hedonistic purposes for populations whose every material need has been satisfied through systematic exploitation of less privileged communities. What proves most disturbing about these dinner conversations is their casual emotional tone when discussing activities that will reshape millions of lives through displacement, environmental devastation, cultural destruction, and systematic economic exploitation. The displacement of indigenous Northrend populations receives discussion comparable to weather pattern analysis, their cultural elimination treated as logistical optimization, their economic subjugation approached as efficiency improvement. The environmental consequences of accelerated resource extraction appear in conversation as abstract cost-benefit calculations, rather than humanitarian disasters affecting countless communities whose survival depends on ecological systems that industrial development will permanently eliminate. The strategic manipulation of political conflicts that will prolong warfare, increase civilian casualties, and prevent stable governance receives attention equivalent to investment portfolio diversification rather than calculated perpetuation of human suffering for economic advantage. These topics flow through dinner conversation with the same emotional weight accorded to seasonal fashion trends or recreational activity planning, their enormous human implications registering as statistical data rather than meaningful consequences affecting real people whose lives will be destroyed through implementation of these carefully coordinated strategies. The evening's entertainment reflects the complete disconnection from normal human experience that characterizes existence at these levels of wealth and power. Rather than conventional artistic performance that might remind participants of shared human culture, they observe real-time consequences of their previous strategic interventions through scrying crystal projections that transform suffering into spectacle for aristocratic amusement. Tonight's viewing includes surveillance footage from the Westfall fishing villages that Aldrich recently acquired, showing former independent families now working predetermined schedules under corporate supervision, their children attending schools whose curricula emphasize industrial skills rather than traditional maritime knowledge, their community gatherings eliminated in favor of efficiency-oriented work schedules that maximize productive output. Additional entertainment includes observation of agricultural transformation in former refugee communities, where traditional subsistence farming has been replaced by export-oriented crop production that generates revenue while eliminating local food security. Families that once maintained nutritional independence through diverse agricultural practices now depend entirely on corporate food distribution systems, while producing luxury commodities they cannot afford to consume. Children born into these transformed communities receive education that prepares them for continued corporate employment, while ensuring they lack knowledge necessary for independent survival or community self-determination. These observations generate discussion focused on optimization strategies and efficiency improvements rather than ethical consideration or humanitarian concern. The human cost of strategic decisions registers as abstract performance metrics rather than meaningful consequences affecting real people, whose autonomy has been systematically eliminated through economic manipulation disguised as benevolent development. The suffering that enables aristocratic comfort appears in conversation as technical problem-solving rather than moral issue requiring ethical evaluation and compassionate response. As the evening progresses toward its conclusion, as participants exchange information about upcoming strategic opportunities and coordinate timing for implementation of continental development projects, the casual nature of these arrangements masks enormous implications for ordinary populations, whose lives will be reshaped by decisions made during what amounts to an extended business meeting disguised as social entertainment. the transformation of entire civilizations, the displacement of indigenous communities, the environmental devastation of resource extraction, and the systematic elimination of political autonomy receive coordination comparable to planning recreational activities rather than recognition as activities that will affect millions of lives through suffering that serves exclusively aristocratic interests. The weight of gold reveals itself not merely in its purchasing power or social influence, but in its capacity to transform human relationships into economic abstractions, to reduce suffering into statistical data, and to enable individuals to implement strategies that destroy everything that makes life meaningful, while providing them with every material comfort that money can acquire. Aldrich leaves the gathering with comprehensive understanding of the machinery that sustains his existence. Yet this knowledge brings no satisfaction, no sense of achievement, no feeling of purpose or meaning that could justify the human cost of such magnificent isolation from moral reality. The morning following the Platinum Circle gathering arrives with the artificial punctuality that governs aristocratic schedules. Yet Aldrich faces this day with consciousness fundamentally altered by exposure to the systematic machinery of continental manipulation that operates through conversations disguised as social entertainment. Today marks his quarterly meeting with King Varian Rin himself, a political ritual that demonstrates how genuine power flows through channels that exist entirely outside democratic processes, public awareness, or constitutional limitations. While ordinary citizens might spend entire lifetimes hoping for brief audiences with recognized political authority, while veteran adventurers consider royal recognition as the pinnacle of achievement worthy of legendary status, Aldrich schedules these encounters as routine business appointments whose primary purpose involves coordinating policy implementation rather than seeking favor or requesting assistance. The relationship between extreme wealth and political authority throughout Azeroth operates through mechanisms far more sophisticated than simple bribery, direct corruption, or crude influence peddling that characterizes amateur attempts at political manipulation. Aldrich possesses no need to offer gold to political leaders because his economic influence creates structural dependencies that render opposition practically impossible rather than merely inadvisable. When your business enterprises provide employment for 30,000 citizens whose families depend on corporate paychecks for basic survival, when your industrial operations supply essential materials for military campaigns that determine national security, when your tax contributions fund public services that entire populations require for infrastructure maintenance, political leaders discover that their own success depends entirely on maintaining relationships that serve your strategic interests, whether they personally approve of your methods or not. The pre-meeting briefing conducted by Gazlo covers agenda items that would astound ordinary citizens with their scope and implications for social policy throughout the Eastern Kingdoms. The Stormwind Harbour expansion project requires governmental approval for environmental modifications that will displace several coastal fishing communities, but the economic benefits include job creation that will provide alternative employment while increasing trade capacity that serves broader regional development goals. The military supply contracts under consideration involve standardizing alliance equipment specifications around materials that happen to derive primarily from Gold Vault subsidiary operations, ensuring quality consistency while creating strategic dependencies that enhance both military effectiveness and corporate profitability. Most revealing among the discussion topics is the comprehensive refugee resettlement program that addresses humanitarian challenges created by ongoing conflicts throughout Azeroth's politically unstable regions. Recent warfare has generated displaced populations throughout the Eastern Kingdoms, Kalimdor, and territories affected by dimensional incursions, creating both moral obligations for civilized societies and logistical challenges that require innovative solutions combining humanitarian assistance with practical resource management. Uldric's proposal offers systematic approaches that address every aspect of refugee integration while generating economic development opportunities that serve broader social interests. The agricultural enterprises within his economic network can provide immediate employment opportunities for displaced farming families, enabling them to utilize traditional skills while adapting to commercial production techniques that offer greater economic security than subsistence activities could provide. His housing development projects can accommodate refugee families in residential communities designed specifically for successful cultural integration, providing modern amenities while maintaining social structures that ease psychological adjustment to changed circumstances. His transportation networks can facilitate efficient relocation logistics that minimize trauma while ensuring optimal placement according to individual capabilities and regional economic needs. The elegant sophistication of these arrangements lies in their genuine mutual benefit structures that serve authentic humanitarian purposes while advancing strategic economic objectives that strengthen Uldric's position without exploiting vulnerable populations through obvious manipulation or coercive pressure. The governmental authorities address legitimate moral obligations while achieving practical solutions for complex social problems that exceed normal administrative capabilities. The displaced populations receive comprehensive assistance that provides genuine opportunities for prosperity and security rather than mere survival. Uldric expands his economic networks through voluntary participation that benefits all involved parties while generating sustainable revenue streams that support continued humanitarian activities. Yet the implementation details reveal how benevolent intentions can create structural outcomes that achieve systematic control through dependency relationships that appear beneficial to all participants, while gradually eliminating alternatives that might preserve individual autonomy or community self-determination. The employment opportunities offered through agricultural enterprises include housing requirements that create company-town relationships, where workers depend entirely on corporate infrastructure for residential stability, social services, and economic security. The crop selection decisions prioritize export markets that generate maximum revenue rather than local food security that would enable community nutritional independence during economic disruptions or supply chain failures. The transportation infrastructure established for refugee relocation creates permanent logistical dependencies that reinforce economic centralization around gold vault operations, rather than supporting distributed development that might enable community autonomy or regional self-sufficiency. Within a single generation, these refugee communities will have transformed from temporarily displaced populations seeking assistance into permanently integrated economic units within systems that provide material prosperity at the cost of cultural autonomy and political self-determination. The process occurs through voluntary choices made by grateful participants who benefit from opportunities that exceed their previous circumstances, while gradually surrendering possibilities for independent community organization or economic self-reliance. His meeting with King Varian occurs within private chambers that few citizens ever glimpse, spaces where the conversation unfolds between equals despite obvious differences in constitutional authority and public recognition. The king requires Uldric's economic cooperation to maintain Stormwind's prosperity and military readiness, while Uldric needs political stability and favorable regulatory environments to protect investment portfolios and expand commercial operations. Their relationship transcends traditional concepts of ruler and subject, operating instead as partnership between complementary power structures whose mutual dependency creates shared interests that override individual preferences or ideological considerations. Varian's primary concerns extend beyond conventional military threats toward economic challenges that require innovative responses exceeding normal governmental capabilities. The Horde's expanding industrial capacity poses competitive challenges that demand alliance investment in advanced manufacturing technologies, strategic resource acquisition, and workforce development programs that exceed available public funding, while requiring expertise that exists primarily within private sector networks. The emerging situation in Northrend presents territorial expansion opportunities that could provide strategic advantages and resource access, but implementation risks overextension of royal treasuries through military expenditures that might destabilize domestic economic foundations. The increasing independence of guild organizations and adventuring groups creates governance complications that challenge traditional authority structures without providing obvious legal mechanisms for administrative control. These heroes accumulate personal wealth, political influence, and military capabilities that operate outside normal institutional frameworks. Their loyalty determined by personal principles rather than governmental directive. Their activities shaped by individual moral judgment rather than strategic policy coordination. Their success in resolving crises that exceed conventional military capabilities makes them indispensable for national security, while their independence makes them unpredictable variables in political calculations that require reliable outcomes for effective governance. Aldrich's solutions invariably involve economic strategies that address legitimate governmental needs while reinforcing his organizational position and expanding his influence throughout political systems that determine policy implementation. The Horde industrial challenge requires alliance investment in advanced manufacturing capabilities that his networks can provide through strategic partnerships and technology transfers that appear to serve national interests while creating economic dependencies that ensure continued political cooperation. The Northrend expansion initiative needs private sector involvement to minimize public financial risk while maximizing territorial development, creating opportunities for resource extraction enterprises that operate under patriotic banners while generating profits that fund continued political influence. The guild independence issue presents particularly sophisticated possibilities for systematic co-optation that transforms potential opposition into cooperative support through incentive structures that align individual heroic motivations with broader strategic objectives. Rather than opposing these organizations through legal restrictions that might provoke resistance or constitutional challenges, Aldrich proposes creating economic opportunities that channel heroic activities toward objectives that serve both royal interests and corporate development goals. Exclusive contracts for rare material procurement provide heroes with prestigious assignments and exceptional compensation while ensuring that resource acquisition serves strategic economic purposes rather than random market distribution. Premium equipment access at discounted rates for specific missions enables heroes to pursue objectives they find personally meaningful, while ensuring their capabilities focus on activities that advance policy goals determined by coordinated planning between governmental and corporate authorities. Performance bonuses for achievements that support broader strategic development create positive reinforcement for heroic activities that contribute to systematic objectives while appearing to reward individual moral initiative and adventurous accomplishment. The result transforms independent heroes into unwitting corporate assets whose personal success depends on advancing institutional interests they may not fully understand or consciously support. These political relationships extend far beyond Stormwind's borders through diplomatic networks that operate independently of recognized governmental channels while achieving coordination that exceeds official treaty agreements in practical effectiveness. Aldrich maintains similar arrangements with political leaders throughout alliance territories and, through carefully managed intermediaries, develops working relationships with Horde political figures whose cooperation enables cross-factional economic activities that transcend traditional political boundaries. His influence networks prioritize stability and predictability over ideological consistency, supporting political arrangements that maintain favorable conditions for elite interests, regardless of their official factional affiliations or public policy positions. The afternoon brings meetings with military contractors and intelligence operatives, whose names never appear in public records despite their central roles in shaping continental affairs through methods that bypass traditional diplomatic procedures. These individuals coordinate activities that manage information flows, orchestrate economic pressure campaigns, and implement policies that maintain favorable conditions for aristocratic interests, while ensuring that governmental authorities receive sufficient benefit to justify their continued cooperation. Their work involves sophisticated manipulation of public opinion, strategic elimination of potential opposition leadership, and systematic prevention of social organization that might challenge existing power distributions. One particularly significant project addresses the increasing prominence of independent adventuring groups whose activities represent potential threats to established power structures through unpredictable behavior patterns, loyalty to personal principles rather than institutional authority, and accumulation of resources that operate outside traditional control mechanisms. These heroes possess capabilities that exceed those of conventional military forces, influence that bypasses normal political channels, and moral authority that commands popular respect, independent of governmental endorsement or elite approval. The comprehensive management strategy combines co-optation techniques with containment procedures that minimize heroic independence while maximizing their utility for advancing elite objectives. Promising heroes receive offers for exclusive partnerships that provide access to rare materials, advanced equipment, and prestigious opportunities that redirect their energies toward assignments that serve institutional interests, while appearing to support their personal moral goals and adventurous aspirations. Those who resist incorporation face systematic obstacles designed to limit their effectiveness while maintaining plausible explanations that avoid obvious retaliation or persecution that might generate popular sympathy or political complications. The intelligence networks that enable these operations represent investments exceeding most guild treasuries in scope and sophistication. Information brokers positioned throughout every major population center provide real-time analysis of political developments, economic trends, and social movements that might affect elite interests or create opportunities for profitable intervention. Surveillance specialists monitor communications between potentially problematic individuals or organizations, their magical capabilities enabling oversight that penetrates privacy protections while remaining undetectable to conventional security measures. Influence operatives embedded within governmental agencies, military organizations, religious institutions, and educational establishments provide strategic intelligence while implementing policy modifications that appear to result from normal institutional processes rather than external manipulation. This comprehensive information advantage enables proactive responses that shape events according to elite preferences, rather than merely reacting to developments after they threaten established interests. Political movements that demonstrate potential for organized opposition receive attention from disruption specialists who systematically eliminate leadership through targeted recruitment, strategic blackmail, or elimination procedures that maintain plausible alternative explanations for organizational collapse. Economic reforms that might redistribute wealth or limit elite privilege encounter coordinated resistance from seemingly unrelated business interests whose objections appear to emerge from independent analysis rather than coordinated planning. Social movements that challenge cultural narratives supporting inequality face well-funded counter-messaging campaigns that appear to represent grassroots sentiment while actually implementing sophisticated propaganda techniques developed through psychological research, funded by corporate resources. Evening consultations with magical advisors demonstrate how arcane arts enhance political and economic influence beyond conventional spellcasting applications that most practitioners consider the primary purpose of magical study. These specialists apply divination techniques for predicting market fluctuations with accuracy that enables systematic profit extraction from investment activities that appear to demonstrate exceptional business acumen rather than supernatural advantage. Enchantment applications influence decision-making processes during negotiations, ensuring favorable outcomes that appear to result from superior persuasion skills rather than magical manipulation of cognitive function. Protective measures shield elite activities from unwanted scrutiny through illusion magic that deflects investigation while maintaining normal appearances that prevents suspicion or curiosity about activities that might attract uncomfortable attention. The magical enhancement of communication networks enables real-time coordination between geographically separated operatives without depending on technological infrastructure that governmental authorities might monitor or interrupt. Temporal manipulation techniques create scheduling advantages that enable superior preparation for negotiations, strategic positioning during market fluctuations, and optimal timing for policy interventions that appear to demonstrate exceptional planning capabilities rather than supernatural assistance. Memory modification procedures ensure that individuals who encounter sensitive information retain only carefully edited recollections that serve elite interests, while eliminating knowledge that might compromise operational security or political relationships. The integration of magical capabilities with conventional political and economic influence creates power projection systems that operate beyond normal understanding or defensive capability, enabling elite organizations to implement strategies that appear to utilize only conventional methods while actually employing supernatural advantages that remain invisible to opposition analysis or governmental oversight. When political influence depends on maintaining complex networks of relationships and dependencies across multiple institutions and geographical regions, magical enhancement becomes essential rather than supplementary for achieving coordination and effectiveness that exceeds normal human organizational capabilities. Yet as these sophisticated systems of control demonstrate their effectiveness in neutralizing potential challenges and advancing elite interests throughout continental political structures, they simultaneously reveal their ultimate inadequacy for addressing the fundamental emptiness that accompanies absolute power over others and systematic isolation from authentic human relationship and meaningful moral purpose. The ultimate truth about extreme wealth in World of Warcraft reveals itself not in the accumulation of resources beyond mortal comprehension, not in the exercise of power that reshapes continents, but in the profound isolation that inevitably accompanies absolute dominance over others and systematic separation from everything that provides meaning to human existence. Aldrich sits alone in his Dalaran penthouse as dawn breaks across the floating city, surrounded by treasures whose individual values exceed the combined treasuries of major kingdoms, yet experiencing an emptiness that no quantity of gold could possibly fill, a spiritual vacuum that all his magnificent possessions only serve to amplify through their very abundance. The morning intelligence briefings arrive with reports that should provide satisfaction for someone whose strategic planning has achieved complete success in neutralizing every identified threat to elite interests throughout the continental political landscape. Lady Brightblade's investigation into agricultural restructuring programs concluded when she accepted a prestigious appointment heading the newly established Heroes Ethics Council, a position that channels her investigative talents toward acceptable targets, while ensuring her research focuses on activities that pose no challenge to existing power structures. The alternative economic experiments in Goldshire and similar communities collapsed systematically as key organizers relocated to pursue attractive employment opportunities in distant regions, their departures dismantling cooperative networks before they could demonstrate viable alternatives to elite-controlled systems. These victories represent the sophisticated effectiveness of wealth-based control mechanisms operating through methods so subtle and comprehensive that opposition dissolves without generating obvious evidence of suppression or persecution. Yet their predictable success provides no emotional satisfaction, no sense of achievement, no feeling of accomplishment that might justify the enormous resources invested in their implementation. The systematic manipulation of human behavior through economic incentives has become so refined, so reliable, so mechanically precise that strategic outcomes occur with the inevitability of natural processes rather than the excitement of competitive challenge or moral triumph. When you possess sufficient resources to predict and control human responses with mathematical accuracy, when your understanding of economic leverage enables systematic manipulation of individual choices and social movements, when your strategic capabilities reduce complex political situations to simple resource allocation problems, existence transforms from dynamic engagement with meaningful challenges into mechanical administration of predetermined processes. The psychological cost of maintaining omniscient awareness of human motivational structures extends beyond mere cynicism into existential despair that corrodes every possibility for authentic relationship or genuine emotional engagement with others. His relationships with family members, political leaders, business associates, and household staff operate according to dynamics shaped entirely by his wealth and position, rather than personal connection to his individual character or authentic appreciation for his qualities as a human being. The servants who attend his daily needs, the advisors who coordinate his business activities, the political figures who seek his cooperation, and even the family members who maintain contact with him, all interact with his resources and social position, rather than engaging with his personality, thoughts, or emotional needs. He could be replaced by any other individual with equivalent financial capabilities without altering these relationships in any fundamental way. Their apparent warmth and loyalty flowing toward benefits he provides rather than authentic affection for who he actually represents as a person. The accumulated effect of years spent manipulating others through economic advantage has eliminated his capacity for relationships based on equality, mutual respect, or shared vulnerability that enable genuine human connection and emotional intimacy. Every conversation becomes strategic calculation rather than authentic communication. Every interaction represents opportunity for advantage extraction rather than meaningful exchange. Every relationship serves utilitarian purposes rather than fulfilling basic human needs for understanding, acceptance, and companionship. The isolation extends beyond mere loneliness into fundamental disconnection from his own humanity. His capacity for empathy eroded by constant awareness of how suffering serves his interests. His ability to experience joy contaminated by recognition of the exploitation required to sustain his comfort. The philosophical implications of his position extend beyond personal unhappiness into recognition that unlimited wealth demonstrates the ultimate meaninglessness of wealth itself as a source of satisfaction or purpose. The ability to reshape social structures, manipulate political institutions, and control economic systems according to personal preference initially appears to represent the pinnacle of human agency and creative potential. Yet implementation reveals that exercising such comprehensive control requires viewing other people as objects to be manipulated rather than subjects with inherent dignity and autonomous will, destroying precisely those relationships and moral connections that provide meaning and purpose to existence. The communities he has transformed through economic intervention achieve measurable improvements in material living standards while losing social cohesion, cultural identity, and collective autonomy that previously provided meaning and purpose, transcending mere survival and comfort. His workers enjoy better nutrition, healthcare, and housing than independent subsistence could provide, but their labor lacks personal investment and cultural significance that traditional economic activities offered their ancestors. Their lives become efficient but hollow, prosperous but purposeless, secure but spiritually empty, mirroring the same existential vacuum that characterizes his own experience despite the vast differences in their material circumstances. The temporal perspective enabled by magical life extension reveals the cyclical futility of historical patterns that repeat across generations without meaningful progress toward resolution of fundamental human problems. The same conflicts between established power and emerging challenges replay endlessly with different characters but identical underlying dynamics. The same social problems require management through identical systematic approaches that address symptoms while preserving causes that generate continued problems requiring continued management. The accumulated knowledge that his empire will continue operating according to established protocols, regardless of his personal participation, eliminates any sense of individual significance within systems whose momentum and institutional independence render personal decision-making irrelevant to outcomes. Yet abandoning his position would accomplish nothing constructive beyond destroying accumulated resources without improving circumstances for populations whose suffering sustains elite privilege throughout Azeroth's political and economic structures. The organizational frameworks would reorganize around remaining elite members. Economic dependencies would transfer to alternative providers, and social control mechanisms would adapt to maintain stability under different management, without fundamentally altering the systematic exploitation that characterizes relationships between wealthy minorities and impoverished majorities. The ultimate price of unlimited wealth reveals itself as complete elimination of authentic choice, meaningful challenge, and genuine relationship from daily existence, the theoretical pinnacle of human achievement within current social arrangements, demonstrating the profound limitations of those arrangements, rather than their successful fulfillment of human potential. The question that haunts his solitary contemplation involves whether these limitations reflect inevitable characteristics of social organization that result from immutable human nature, or represent artifacts of specific historical circumstances that could potentially be transcended through different approaches to resource distribution, power sharing, and community organization that prioritize collective flourishing over individual accumulation. Yet engaging seriously with such possibilities would require acknowledging that his current position represents not achievement, but moral failure, not successful exploitation of opportunity, but systematic destruction of conditions that enable authentic human flourishing and meaningful existence. Such recognition would demand fundamental changes that his accumulated dependencies and institutional commitments render practically impossible to implement without destroying everything he has built, while providing no guarantee that alternatives would prove superior to existing arrangements or capable of avoiding similar corruptions when exposed to comparable concentrations of wealth and power. So Aldrich continues his daily routines of managing an empire that provides everything material comfort could desire, while offering nothing that human existence actually requires for satisfaction, meaning, or spiritual fulfillment. This is what life truly becomes for the rich in World of Warcraft. Not a fantasy of unlimited power and endless pleasure, but a cautionary demonstration of wealth's ultimate inadequacy as substitute for authentic relationships, meaningful challenges, and moral purposes that provide genuine satisfaction and spiritual fulfillment. The real tragedy lies not in the existence of such wealth, but in recognizing that achieving it destroys precisely those aspects of human experience that make existence worthwhile, creating magnificent palaces that serve as prisons, accumulating infinite resources that provide nothing essential, and wielding absolute power that reveals its own ultimate powerlessness to address the fundamental emptiness that accompanies systematic separation from authentic human community and meaningful moral purpose. The distance between paradise and suffering, measured at the beginning in gold pieces that seemed infinite in their power to separate and protect, proves in the end to be no distance at all. Aldrich sits in perfect isolation, surrounded by treasures that could purchase kingdoms, yet discovering that the ultimate cost of unlimited wealth is the complete elimination of everything that makes existence meaningful. His empire operates with mechanical precision, generating profits that exceed the economic output of nations, neutralizing threats with systematic efficiency that renders opposition impossible, controlling populations through dependencies so comprehensive that resistance becomes literally unthinkable. Yet this perfect success provides no satisfaction, no sense of achievement, no feeling that his life serves any purpose beyond the perpetuation of systems that transform human potential into aristocratic comfort. The knowledge that he could disappear tomorrow without altering the fundamental operation of structures he created reveals the profound insignificance of individual existence within institutions designed to concentrate wealth while eliminating authenticity, meaningful challenge, and genuine human connection. This is the ultimate truth about being rich in Azeroth. Wealth beyond imagination purchases everything except the one thing that makes life worth living: the capacity to care about others, to be cared for in return, to face meaningful challenges, to contribute to something greater than personal comfort. The real price of paradise is discovering that paradise, when purchased with others' suffering, becomes indistinguishable from hell,